if they're left rotting in the field, it means that farmers this year are planting less and having to import even more. You asked, why is this happening? Well, the issue with visas is that you still need a sponsor. You need to complete a lot of paperwork, and you have to prove that you've got savings, and you have to pay £259 for a visa to come and work temporarily on a British farm. To go and work on a German or a French farm, a young seasonal worker would just have to pay probably a €9 train ticket to get there. At Best for Britain, we run something called the UK Trade and Business Commission. We have been doing visits to farms. We went to one a couple of months ago in Kent, and they're saying that over 8% of their produce is now rotting in the fields. And instead of investing into the UK as they were going to do, they're now having to actually invest in farms outside of the UK, and all that lost investment therefore not coming into Britain.
So these farms are having to sorry to interrupt there. These farms growing this stuff are having to import the stuff that they would otherwise be growing because they can't pick it from the fields because they're trying to pick it. Wow.
Exactly. So berries coming from Morocco. And we have a health crisis, we have an obesity crisis, as well as a cost of living crisis. And to think that healthy British produce is rotting in the fields rather than going onto supermarket shelves in the UK is really probably not what people voted to leave for. I just want to make one other point. We of course do have low unemployment in the UK at the moment, but there are areas that have unemployment. But unfortunately those areas aren't the ones where the farms are based. So in the south, east and East Anglia, where you've got lots of produce being grown, actually there aren't any unemployed people to take those jobs. And so to get there, when our infrastructure and our transport isn't great, and when you may have to give up your benefits in order to do a 3-month seasonal job, and then maybe have to wait a few months to get your benefits back again, it's just not realistic. These jobs are really very well suited for young people coming from Europe, easily and quickly to do some work here and then go home. But now the barriers are just too high, too expensive, and they're not coming.
Before I let you get back to the lemon and honey, Naomi, what is it that you would want to see Keir Starmer do to remedy this particular problem?
I think Starmer's plan yesterday sounded like a good start, and we hope that his proposition for simpler travel to business will make things easier for seasonal workers. He also
Why can't he tell the farmers to just pay better wages, encourage more people locally to come and do these jobs for better money?
What Britain needs and what British businesses need, and it's not just agriculture, is a commitment from Labour to dismantle the barriers to trade that this government created with its bad Brexit deal. The wages have gone up, but the margins aren't there, and all we would then be doing is passing that cost on to the consumer and adding to the cost of living crisis that we've already got. The way to deal with it really is just to have freedom of movement for these kinds of workers.
Good to speak to you, Naomi Smith. You're Chief Executive of the Internationalist Campaign Group Best for Britain. 7:10, listening to that is Tom Hadley, Global Workforce Consultant working with the International Labour Organisation. How specific a problem is the lack of workforce availability? How specific is that to the UK, Tom? Morning.
Good morning. Well, it does cut across most countries. The sector will vary, but when I do, when I have conversations with employers around the world, you've always got, technology, digital, those kind of sectors will come up. I think the UK in some of the blue-collar sectors is finding it harder, partly, as we just heard, because we've got record levels of employment already in this country. So it is hard. Government needs to take action, but also employers having to change the way they hire.
Where would these workers come from if these farmers in particular are not being able to reach into Europe as they once could?
Well, I mean, it was interesting hearing the previous comments. I remember 5 or 6 years ago, in fact even before Brexit, trying to work with government on a scheme to encourage more UK nationals to come into agriculture. It didn't work then, and it's not working now. And I do think that the kind of approach to immigration, where you try and almost depoliticise it, which is really hard, where you say we're going to look at the data, we're going to listen to employers, and we will bring people in when there's a need. Because one thing that happens, it's not just about an impact on employers, it's not just an impact on consumers, it's an impact on other workers. There's nothing more stressful They're working in a sector where there's not enough staff to make the job doable. So you get into sort of catch-22 where people don't want to go into sectors, whether it's care, agriculture, etc., because there's not enough work to make the job feasible and sustainable.
Good to speak to Tom Hadley, your global workforce consultant working with the International Labour Organisation. Andrew Meredith joins us, the editor of Farmers Weekly, focusing specifically on the problem in the agricultural sector. Thanks for being there, Andrew. This is going to really start to hurt shortly, isn't it, given that it's a peak harvest season?
Absolutely. There's all sorts of crops being harvested now. People will be familiar with seeing the combines start rolling in the field before long, but the harvest season for horticulture, all the different types of wonderful fruit and vegetables and soft fruits, that sort of thing, is such a long season, but it's still not long enough for these migrant workers. It's such a precarious job to do, particularly when they have to move around the country in the UK from harvest to harvest. So farmers really recognise that this is a difficult job. And this is why so few people here in the UK want to do it. How many more people do you need? Well, the government has added another 10,000 to the seasonal agricultural workers scheme pilot from 30 to 40,000, but the estimates by the National Farmers Union say 70,000 would be preferable.
Gosh, so we're almost halfway to where we need to be here. And once the visas are offered, because the government did give a carve out to allow for these visas to be offered to what's called low-skilled workers in this sector, has that been taken up with great gusto or not particularly?
My understanding is the pilot scheme before the extra 10,000 was added on was roughly full. We're moving into sort of Central Asia to find these workers now instead of in Europe and Ukraine. Although there is still many Ukrainian workers coming, I think. But you know, it is getting further and further away to find people that are able and willing to come. And I think that even if Brexit hadn't happened, we probably would be still having this conversation to an extent with the impact of COVID, and also don't forget the falling pounds. So the value of the wages wouldn't be as great for sending them home into different currencies.
So by when do you need to get these workers in? And if farmers don't, what are my listeners going to experience in the supermarket shelves or on their plates?
Well, any waste in any system is bad, but particularly British food rotting in the fields is really bad news for consumers, and it's really bad news for farmers. It isn't just the cost of labour that's gone up this year, it's the cost of fuel and fertiliser as well. And so this is pushing some businesses now, I think, to breaking point, not just in the horticulture sector, but also we're seeing really significant impacts in the pig sector too, throughout the supply chain there.
Very good to speak to you. Thank you for your time. Andrew Meredith, you are editor of Farmers Weekly. Clearly there's a lot going on here. The war in Ukraine, as Andrew said, the falling pound, the fuel crisis, all of that is adding to this. So to an extent there are always going to be problems, but there is absolutely no doubt that the way in which we've set up the immigration system post-Brexit is having an effect. Starmer talks about making Brexit work. Would it be working, Brexit, if Starmer allowed for more low-skilled workers to come and pick the fruit in the fields that is currently rotting? Or does that undermine part of what you think is the whole point of Brexit, that in order to drive up wages so that these organisations cannot keep relying on cheaper European labour, you have to hold the line, you have to find the workers from somewhere, you've got to magic them up somehow, otherwise what was the point of leaving in the first place? To which I have to ask, well, are you going to do it? Do you want to pick fruit in the field? I don't particularly. We had a system that seemed to work beforehand. 0345 6060 973 is the number. Do you want Starmer to change those rules to make Brexit work, to bring in more low-skilled migrant workers to fill those jobs that we desperately need filling? Come to your thoughts in a few moments. After the news.
We all heard what happened today, but each day we're reminded there's nothing guaranteed about our democracy. We have to fight for it, defend it, and earn it.
6 dead at a shooting outside Chicago in a 4th of July parade. President Joe Biden speaking in Washington, D.C. last night. Closer to home.
It's been reported Boris Johnson was aware of a formal complaint against Chris Pincher before he made him Deputy Chief Whip. MLBC's Rachel Venables with the story.
All the latest on the ongoing 5th day of front pages around what Boris Johnson did or did not know about his former Deputy Chief Whip. Tom Swarbrick in for Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. 7:16 news headlines now. Simon Conway.
A 22-year-old man has been arrested after 6 people were shot dead at a 4th of July parade in Chicago. The Home Secretary is urging police to use tough new powers to stop fuel protesters disrupting motorways. And figures show last month was the worst June for the UK's car industry since 1996. LBC weather, cloudy for western areas, the best of the sunshine in the southeast, a high of 21 degrees.
LBC travel, I'm Joanne Webb. Long delays continue on the M25 clockwise from junction 30 at the A13 to the QE2 bridge. A car's broken down and one lane is closed for recovery. And then there are delays of about half an hour on the A12 southbound to junction 12 at Mount Nessing. That's all down to an accident and the road is partially blocked. Also on the A127, that's the arterial road at Southend, there's been an accident. It's right near to the junction of Progress Way and the road is partially blocked in both directions. In Sydenham, Sydenham Hill is closed both ways at Mount Acre Close, and that's because a car was on fire. And London Overground services still can't run to and from Hackney Downs to both Cheshunt and Enfield Town following a signal failure.
This is LBC.
In 100 yards, turn left.
Nowadays, driving is so easy. We don't have to remember to do anything.
In 50 yards, turn left.
Okay. It's like with Otto Sergey. He now checks for better car insurance deals completely automatically.
In 10 yards, turn left.
So we never have to worry about missing anything ever again.
I just missed the turning. Sorry.
Turn around where possible.
Oh, Sergey.
Make up your car insurance with Compare the Market to automatically find ways to save. Simples. LBC.
Tax credits are ending, and the Department for Work and Pensions will be moving people across to Universal Credit by 2024. Search Understanding Universal Credit to find out more. Eligibility criteria apply.
Imagine being this close to a real-life shark. Or hundreds of jellyfish. You don't have to when you visit Sea Life London, because we're home to thousands of sea creatures from all around the globe. As for seahorses that sound like... or a turtle that plays its flippers like a tambourine. Don't hold your breath on those. You'll have to visit to see the real sorts. See the wonder under London at Sea Life London Aquarium.
St Pancras Clinical Research is looking for participants with painful osteoarthritis to take part in clinical trials assessing new medicines, aiming to reduce pain, increase mobility, and improve quality of life. If you have osteoarthritis of the knee and experience pain frequently during the day, you might be suitable for a clinical trial. Get access to expert medical care and get involved in cutting-edge research. Sign up now at stpancrasclinicalresearch.com.
At Pets in a Pickle, we keep things simple, so you can get a quicker quote at our best price, which is why you won't find us on price comparison sites. Go to petsinnapickle.co.uk.
First up in today's tour, a modern masterpiece, the new Italian stack from McDonald's. A carefully crafted burger made with 2 delicious beef patties, mozzarella, and a splash of rich tomato sauce. An edible work of art. And over here in the collection, the exquisite crispy chicken Italiano. Delectable crispy chicken breast paired beautifully with a basil pesto style sauce. Perfection.
Holiday from home with the McDonald's summer menu, available until the 26th of July. From 11 a.m, participating restaurants subject to availability. Nick Ferrari at breakfast with Tom Swarbrick on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Talk about what happened just outside Chicago in the US last night. 6 dead as a result of a shooting there. Meantime, closer to home, Keir Starmer saying that he would make Brexit work. Question is how? Lewis on the farmers. Tom, they voted en masse for Brexit. Now they are reaping what they have sown. He says, there are thousands, this is Dean in Woodford, there are thousands of cheap labourers sitting on their backsides at the pleasure of Her Majesty, probably going out of their minds with boredom, who maybe need a spark in life that could possibly lead them in the right direction. Perhaps they should do the picking in the fields. We've got the Justice Minister coming on later, might put it to him. Ian's in Windsor. Ian.
Hi Tom, good to speak to you. Following on from that last comment about prisoners, we've also got 109,000, a record number of asylum seekers waiting for their decision, but also locked up in hotels and detention centres. So why not join up the dots and put them to work? I think a lot of them would actually really want to work. So why not do that?
The only reason I can think not to do that, Ian, is because aren't you sending a signal to those who would also want to make their way to this country that if they come, they might get a job? That would act, I suggest, as a bit of a pull factor.
well, there's a debate about them being economic migrants. Well, but you've got like
no, I'm not
until,
saying
until
it's
jobs.
actually
Why not?
I know. Listen, it's regardless actually of whether they are either economic migrants or asylum seekers. If you give the message that if you come to this country, you will be given a job, more people, I think, might try it. But you're right. In America, for example, if you're here for longer than 6 months waiting for an asylum claim, you get the right to work.
Yeah, there's got to be something that could be done. I think you've made a good point there about being a pull factor, but clearly there's a pull factor anyway. We don't take anywhere near the amount of asylum seekers that, say, Germany does, but there still is a significant pull factor, and applications have gone up, or arrivals have gone up by 300% since Brexit. So how's that working out?
What I don't understand, Ian, just finally, would it be sort of incongruent with the idea of having left the European Union that migrant numbers were based on need? So migrant numbers could go up, they could go down, it doesn't matter. It's based on the needs of the economy. And right now we have lettuces and cucumbers rotting in the fields at a time when we need to produce our own food, in part as a result of a lack of ability to get workers in from Europe. Why don't we change that? Why don't we say, post-Brexit, doesn't matter, we need people to pick the fruit?
Because the government would want to make it look like they've made a mistake, or the voters have made a mistake, and so it's just pride keeping this nonsense going, really.
Ian, thank you very much indeed. Come to more of your thoughts in a few moments' time. 7:23, just outside Chicago last night. At a 4th of July parade, gunshots heard with people running in the opposite direction, with this incident coming just weeks after a mass shooting at a school in Texas and a supermarket in New York. The US gun debate has been reignited once again. Last night, the governor of Illinois, J. Robert Pritzker, called for a change in gun laws.
A day dedicated to freedom has put into stark relief the one freedom we as a nation refuse to uphold: the freedom of our fellow citizens to live without the daily fear of gun violence.
6 dead, many injured. President Joe Biden gave his 4th of July address in Washington, D.C. last night, shortly after those horrific scenes unfolded in Illinois. He briefly addressed the shooting in that speech.
We all heard what happened today, but each day we're reminded there's nothing guaranteed about our democracy, nothing guaranteed about our way of life. We have to fight for it, defend it, and earn it by voting.
President Biden speaking last night. Kelly Bauer is senior editor at the Block Club Chicago. Thank you very much for coming on the program, Kelly. What actually happened last night at this parade?
So it happened early at the start of Independence Day in Highland Park, which is a suburb just outside of the city itself. People were gathering right at the beginning of the parade with food, with family, friends, getting ready to celebrate the day when a gunman opened fire, ultimately killing at least 6 people and wounding dozens.
Do we know more about who the gunman is?
Yeah, so the gunman is someone who had grown up in the Highland Park community. He has been taken into custody, but he was at large for hours. And during that time, officials were telling people to stay inside your homes, warning folks that he's armed and dangerous. Now, as I said, he has been taken into custody and charges are pending.
And a horrific detail I understand about the manner in which he was shooting at people from, I think, a rooftop. Is that right?
Yes, so witnesses and authorities have said that he was on a rooftop. He was able to get there by just climbing an unsecured ladder that had been left and was shooting at folks who were watching the parade.
And the response from the authorities has been what, Kelly? More general hand-wringing about the state of gun control in the US?
Yes, I would say exactly that. We see after all these mass shootings that we have in the United States that some officials will immediately say we need gun control, we need stronger regulations, and then you'll see other sides saying, no, this isn't the time to have this conversation, or we need to be careful, balance this with the Second Amendment.
Sorry to interrupt, Kelly. Not a lot from the president last night, weirdly.
No, we haven't seen much comment from him yet.
expect we'll get more of it through the day. Kelly, thank you for your time. Kelly Bauer, your senior editor at the Block Club, Chicago. 7:26 is the time. Let's come to matters closer to home, and a fifth day of newspaper front pages about what the Prime Minister did or did not know about his now ex-Deputy Chief Whip. This, of course, relates to Chris Pincher, who resigned based on those allegations of groping a number of Tory colleagues. Rachel Venables is LBC's correspondent and has what is the latest, Rachel, because this saga continues to rumble on.
Yeah, the latest line in this story that just won't go away for the Prime Minister is that he allegedly was made aware of a formal complaint about Chris Pincher's inappropriate behaviour when Mr Pincher was a Foreign Office Minister. The BBC reporting that that complaint was confirmed in a disciplinary process, and it would mean, if true, that Boris Johnson knew about this before he made Pincher a Deputy Chief Whip back in February. Now, just to put this all in context and pull it back a few days, of course, the MP quit his government role last Thursday over allegations he groped two men at a Conservative private members club. Now, it took another day for him to lose the Tory whip, to be kicked out of the party, and then over the weekend came that steady drip in the papers of more and more allegations against him of unwanted sexual advances to men, including fellow Conservative MPs. Now, these are allegations that Chris Pincher has denied, but it forced Downing Street and ministers to jump to Boris Johnson's defence, insisting he was not aware of any specific allegations before promoting Pincher. Now, here is, for example, Will Quince, the Minister for Families, speaking to you yesterday, Tom.
All I know is this. I've been given a categorical assurance that the Prime Minister was not aware of any specific allegation or complaint. And I'll go
And
further.
you're happy with that assurance? You're happy to trust them?
So, Tom, I am, because I don't believe that anybody in that position, let alone the Prime Minister, if they are aware of what we are now aware of in the papers over the last 3 days, would have appointed Chris Pincher to the Deputy Chief Whip position if they'd have known about that.
Well, just hours later then, yesterday, Downing Street confirmed Boris Johnson did know of concerns about Mr Pincher's conduct. And on Tonight with Andrew Marr, the Brexit Opportunities Minister Jacob Rees-Mogg dismissed them as just rumours and again backed Boris.
There were rumours. I think Prime Ministers have to be just. They can't just say, I've heard a bit of gossip, and I think you've done something that I wouldn't approve of. I mean,
They could ask, couldn't they?
what are they supposed to ask? I mean, the Propriety and Ethics did.
Is there anything
Propriety and Ethics did get asked about the appointment of Mr Pincher earlier this year, and that seems a perfectly reasonable step to take.
So,
but you can't judge people on rumours.
Well, now the BBC have broken the news that the Prime Minister and his deputy, Dominic Raab, were told of a formal complaint about inappropriate behaviour. As mentioned, this while Pincher was a Foreign Office Minister back in 2019 to 2020. Crucially, they say that triggered a disciplinary process that confirmed his misconduct. Mr Pincher has been approached for comment. Previously in a statement, the Tamworth MP, who's now, of course, sitting as an independent, has promised to cooperate fully with an inquiry into his behaviour.
We'll speak to Dominic Raab just after the news at 8. Rachel, thank you very much indeed. LBC correspondent Rachel Venables. Brian, you're in Worthing. You want to talk about this shortage of workers, particularly down on the farm. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Tom. I would let the fruit in the fields perish, actually, for now. Short-term pain for long-term gain. And let the economy find a way. Let the economy find a way of paying poorly paid, hard-working people more. They deserve it. Isn't it a part... You've worked for the mayor's administration, Tom, I think, in the past. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yes. But this messaging, like levelling up and things like that, doesn't that tie in quite neatly with, levelling up? Paying lowly paid people even more. It's an interesting part of the political spectrum. I think it's...
Who's going to pay them? Who are these people who are going to be paid more to come and do this job?
Yeah, I said... They don't get paid. I don't know what the going rate is for a fruit picker at the moment, but I would do it if it was paid. If you could earn a living out of it. I mean, anybody that works that hard, I think, probably deserves to have a foot on the housing ladder. Something like that. Why not? Why not pay people properly for working hard?
Where are those farms going to get the money to pay those people with?
The economy will find a way. Then they have to sell their produce for more. The prices of things will have to go up. The end user will need to pay more as well.
Okay, so food price rises across the board to pay for the increased salaries of those who now work down on the farm.
The economy needs to find a way. It needs to be given the freedom to find a way without government intervention all the time. It's an interesting part of the political spectrum. I think it's where the Eurosceptic wing of the Conservative Party almost meets the trade union side of the Labour Party as well. There's actual common ground here on opposite sides of the political spectrum.
And that is definitely what the government is aiming for, Brian. And I do think there is a genuine argument about whether that might be the right thing to do. That increases wages. Government talk about high wage, high skill economy. What they forget to add, which is, I think, part of the point you're making, is yes, high wage, yes, high skill, but also high prices.
If that's what it is, the economy has to find a way.
All right, Brian, thank you very much indeed. 0345 6060 973, the number. After the headlines.
Our working assumption at the moment is around gas. There was no mains gas going into those buildings, but it doesn't stop our working assumption because at this stage we can't rule out whether it was a heating stove.
One person has died, 3 others taken to hospital after a major gas explosion and a huge fire at a block of flats in Bedford. Meantime,
the search for your perfect holiday is over. Introducing EasyJet Holidays.
The chaos at the airports continue, and now one airline has seen one of its big bosses resign. We'll bring you the details after this. 7:32 news headlines now on LBC. Simon Conway.
A shooting at an Independence Day parade in Chicago has left at least 6 people dead. Dozens more were injured after a gunman shot at random after climbing onto a rooftop in a suburban part of the city. A 22-year-old man has been arrested. Boris Johnson is facing further questions over the appointment of MP Chris Pincher as Deputy Chief Whip. It has now been reported the Prime Minister was made aware of a formal complaint about inappropriate